can you tell us, how do you define, first of all, grand macro strategy versus just macro strategy? And what is GDP for, actually?
So let's get back to, basics. We all know what macro strategy is when we're talking about what we project GDP will be, 2, 1.9, 1.8, etc. What will inflation be? This is the role traditionally of economists and economic policy, and politicians who don't really understand either, echoing them, having had advice papers or position papers put on their desks by them. That's macro strategy. Grand strategy is something in the realms of national security or history. It used to be called statescraftship or even all the way back to Plato's Republic, how to become a king or a monarch, how to rule a political entity. And of course, the economy is part of that, but it's not focused on the economy per se. It's focused on national power, national interests within a competitive international environment, a zero-sum international environment. So that's grand strategy. I believe we're in a world now which is more like the 19th century. Again, much more contested, much more zero-sum, partly because of the reasons we just discussed, the failure of the system to deliver for the middle class within the West, but also because of increased imbalances between countries internationally and the destabilization of the global power structure centered on the US, the military power structure. So as a result, large economies first, small economies second, are having to fuse macro strategy with grand strategy. You get grand macro strategy, which is basically a modern spin on the old theme of what are we trying to do? What are our national interests? How do we achieve them? And in achieving them, we don't just say, what's GDP going to be next quarter? 2, 1.9. We ask ourselves, what is our GDP for? Is our GDP driven, and I've used this example on many podcasts, is our GDP driven entirely by hairdressing, for example, which theoretically could happen. Everyone could put down all their tools and say, we all want to retrain as hairdressers tomorrow, the entire economy. Well, you'd have a boom in hairdryers and on, swivel seats and on mirrors. Would it leave you internationally in a better or worse position? So what is our GDP for? And the answer is most of our politicians still don't have an idea. Most of our leadership class don't have an idea.